There is nothing more annoying when you take a photo of the place you're traveling in and the photo does not do the location justice. At least this is one of the most annoying things for me when I first started doing travel photography. So today we're going over 10 travel photography hacks that will keep that from happening, that will help you make your travel photos look exactly how they look when you're in the location, looking, your jaw's dropping, your eyes are wide, you're amazed at the location. These travel photography hacks are gonna help your travel photos get the same reaction. No matter if you're shooting with an iPhone camera or an expensive DSLR or mirrorless camera, these travel photography hacks will help bring your travel photos from amateur to professional. And I wish I would have known these sooner, so that is why I'm here sharing this video today so that you can know them sooner than I did. If you're new here, hey guys, I'm Indigo from the Indigo Sahara travel blog. I am also a travel photographer, so be sure to subscribe to my channel if you want to know more photography tips and travel destination guides, budget travel tips, all those fun things I post about here on this channel. Number one is to clean your camera lens. This is probably the most underrated travel photography hack there is because it is so simple but so easily forgotten. Whether you're shooting with your iPhone again or your expensive camera lens, be sure to wipe it off before you take any photos. This can make a huge difference because if your camera lens has a smudge on it, it can make light blur, it can show up in your photo and make it just a lot less clear. So if you take literally 5 seconds to wipe off your camera lens before you start shooting, you're gonna have clearer imagery. And trust me, sometimes I forget to clean my lens too, but it really does make the world of a difference. And it's one of the easiest travel photography hacks there is. So that is why it's number one. Clean your camera lens. Number two, straighten your horizon line. This is one of my biggest photography pet peeves, if I'm being honest. And again, I've made this mistake before I knew that it was even a mistake. So that is why I'm sharing it with you so that you know that it is a mistake, and that is to keep your horizon line straight. Professional travel photographers can immediately tell the difference between amateur and professional simply based on if the horizon is crooked. Crooked horizon lines can ruin photo visuals, especially when taking epic landscape shots, so it is imperative that whether you do it while you're shooting by straightening the actual camera or by skewing the crop in post-production when you're editing, it is imperative that you make those horizon lines parallel with the top and bottom of the photo. Number three is one of my favorite travel photography hacks, and that is to make the background of your photos look bigger with lens compression. Have you ever taken a photo of a destination and you're like, why does this not look as epic as it does in real life? Lens compression can help you do that. Lens compression is a zoom lens phenomenon that makes the background, it compresses the background with the foreground of your photo and makes the background look bigger. This is especially useful for me when I'm in the mountains and I can't get those mountains to look as big and as epic as they do in real life. I will zoom into the photo, physically back up if I need to get the whole mountain in the shot, and that will make the mountain look bigger. You can do this with a zoom telephoto lens. I recommend 85 millimeters or higher, or you can do this with an iPhone or a smartphone that has decent zoom capabilities like 5x or more. All you have to do is zoom into the shot and physically back up, again, like I said, if you need to get the whole subject of the photo in the shot. Physically back up, zoom in with your camera, and it will make your background look bigger. I do have a quick video on Pinterest that went super viral explaining this phenomenon a bit more if you want a more in-depth explanation. So I'll link that video in the description. Number four is to frame your photo well. Framing is a photography element of design that essentially is exactly what it sounds like. You're making a frame within the photo. You're framing the subject without the photo, without a picture frame. This draws the viewer's attention to the subject of the photo, and I find it's really easy to do when doing travel photography, especially if you're somewhere with great architecture like arches, physical architecture arches, or if you're in nature, I'll often use foliage, so like leaves, flowers, plants, branches as the frame of the photo to frame that subject and get some beautiful photo composition. Next is to find a leading line. Leading lines are another element of design used in photography to get that beautiful photo composition and to lead the eye to the subject of the photo. In other words, leading lines are literally lines that you find within the destination of your photo to lead to the subject of the photo. Again, like framing, it is often very easy to find good leading lines in travel photography if you take the time to look for them before you take your shot. Roads, beach shorelines, hiking trails are all really good examples of leading lines that you can potentially use. All you have to do is place the subject on the top of or on the leading line itself, and that leading line will lead the eye right to the subject and make some great photo composition. Again, super easy. You can do this with a camera, you can do this on an iPhone, and it'll make your photo a lot more appealing. Next is to add foreground to your travel photography. Remember learning the difference between foreground, midground, and background in your elementary school art class? Well, now it's time to put that knowledge to the test. Not only does adding foreground highlight your subject in your photo, again, like leading lines, like framing, but it also adds a lot of depth to the photo. You can easily add foreground to your travel photos by using foliage, flowers, or props, which we'll talk about later, as the photo foreground. Sometimes your framing can even double as your photo's foreground, and I do recommend keeping your foreground blurred, keeping it out of focus, and keeping your subject in focus. This will give that photo a lot more depth, and of course keep your subject in focus, which is important. Next is to invest in a prime lens. This is another travel photography hack that I wish I would have learned sooner, because I did not know for the longest time how travel bloggers, other travel photographers got that beautiful blurred background when they weren't close up to the camera. And once I learned about prime lenses, it made this a lot easier for me. Of course, learning manual photography is going to help add that blur a lot. You're going to know the logistics and the manual physical reasons why a camera can add blur, that background blur in your photo. Manual photography is really important to do that. But even if you know manual photography, from my experience, your camera gear can often only get that manual photography so far. I am a firm believer that it is the photographer that makes the good photo, not the camera, and that you can use these photography hacks with any camera, no matter how cheap or expensive it is. But after I invested in a prime lens, which I'll explain in a second, it made using my manual photography a lot easier to get that shot that I had in my mind that I wanted with the background blurred. Now, what is a prime lens? Now, basically a prime lens is a lens that does not zoom. It doesn't zoom at all. You can't zoom in, you can't zoom out. It is just one focal length. And this is what gives you the crispest, most clear imagery possible, because there's no variation possible, right? So that's how you get the very crisp, clear shots with crisp, clear background blur. It is also important that you invest in a prime lens if you're trying to do what I was trying to do and now do, that you invest in a prime lens with a low f-stop. For the best results, I recommend getting a lens with an f-stop of lower than 2.0. So for example, my prime lens that I'm using right now and use for the vast majority of my travel photography, unless I'm trying to get that zoom lens compression like I mentioned earlier, is my 35mm 1.4 f-stop camera lens. Camera lenses are quite expensive, especially if you're just starting out. So this is a pro tip. This is one to elevate your travel photography. You do not need to do this at the beginning of your travel photography journey. I had plenty of paid travel photography gigs without my prime lens, but this is something that I wish I would have known a lot sooner. Had to learn the hard way, had to take literally years to figure out that a prime lens is what I was looking for to get that beautiful background blur if my subject was not directly in front of my camera. Of course, you can do this with other lenses too, and zoom lenses included, but this is the easiest way that I find to make it happen, and therefore it is my most used camera lens on trips. I do have a blog post with all of my favorite travel camera lenses that I will link below, so you can check out all the lenses that I've used and what I recommend. Next is another pro tip, and that is to use an ND filter during midday light. Another thing that I did not understand how other photographers did when I was first learning travel photography and manual photography is how they got that background blur in midday light without overexposing the shot, without having those bright white lights in the background that were very overexposed and not cute. You couldn't see the background at all. I didn't know how they did it. Well, it turns out that most travel photographers use an ND filter or a neutral density filter to make that happen. Of course, shooting during sunrise and sunset are best case scenario for travel photography because you don't have that harsh midday light, but sometimes your travel itineraries, you don't have a choice but to shoot in midday because you only have so much time during your trip. You only have so much time at that destination. So this is where an ND filter can be really helpful. Essentially, an ND filter acts as sunglasses, a sunglass lens for your camera lens, and you can adjust how much sunglass lighting, how much shade is added essentially to your photo, and darken the photo in that mid-harsh day sun. To get that background blur that I mentioned in the last travel photography hack, you have to let more light in. Again, learning manual photography will help make this a lot more sense, but you have to let more light in to get that background blur. If there's a lot of light in the mid-harsh day sun, you can't let more light in manually into the shot without overexposing the back. Unless, of course, you have an ND filter that acts as sunglasses. You darken the photo with the ND filter and then manually lighten the photo with your camera, and that will give you that background blur without overexposing anything. Similarly, this next travel photography hack is another great filter that a lot of travel photographers use, and that is the CPL filter. The CPL filter, or the circular polarizing filter, is used to minimize light reflections in your travel photography. This is especially useful when shooting water because light reflects off water and gives that overexposed white shine in the photo. Sometimes you want to get a photo of the exact color of the water without that reflection, or if you're shooting through windows or on glass where light can be reflected and can show up in your photo, this is where the CPL filter comes in handy. Again, using the sunglass analogy, think about the difference between a regular pair of sunglasses and a polarizing pair of sunglasses. The polarizing sunglasses, what do? They make light reflect less. You can see through water clearly. You can see through windows more clearly with polarizing sunglasses on, and the CPL, or the circular polarizing lens filter, does the same thing for a camera. So if you've ever wondered how photographers get beautiful shots of beautiful blue water without those annoying light reflections overexposing against the water, that's how. And finally, number 10, my last travel photography hack for you that is super easy, anyone can do it, is to hold props that are relevant to your travel destination in your photo. Again, this is a super easy one that pros and amateurs, whether you're shooting with your camera and a fancy lens or shooting with your iPhone camera, this is one that anyone can do, and it brings those travel photos to life. My favorite props to use in my travel photos include hats, like wide brim hats, drinks, culturally relevant foods, flowers, beach bags, backpacks, hiking poles. There are so many different props that you can use in travel photos, and they're really easy to find. Literally, when you're taking a photo, look around at your stuff that you are carrying, that you have on you. What's around you? What are you using in that destination? Hold it in the photo, act like you're using it in the photo, and it can really bring that photo to life. Plus, if the subject of your photo, whether it's you or someone else, has that awkward, like, what do I do with my hands when I'm posing this photo feeling, holding a prop takes that feeling away completely. If you're holding a prop, you know exactly what you're doing with your hands, and there's no awkward, like, what do I do with my hands feeling when you're taking the photo. So that feeling is completely eliminated when you're holding a prop, which is another pro photography hack and why I love to use props. And that wraps up this video with 10 travel photography hacks that I wish I would have known sooner and that can bring your photos from amateur to pro. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this one by liking, commenting, and subscribing. And if you haven't already watched my travel photography tips video, I will link that for you to watch next. Other than that, I will see you in next week's video. So for now, ciao.